He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hello, I'm Simon Morris. Well, wouldn't you know it, I go away for a couple of weeks and Hollywood brings out the big guns. 3 brand new blockbusters. Well, I say brand new. There's another Superman, by my count the umpteenth since the Man of Steel first stood up for truth, justice and the American way. And there are reboots of 2 well-worn franchises, albeit graced this time by undeniably attractive stars. Jurassic World Rebirth and The Fantastic Four First Steps.
Family. It's about connecting to something bigger than yourself. We'll face it together. As a family.
Well, frankly, I'll see Vanessa Kirby and Scarlett Johansson in pretty much anything, even if you do have to wonder if this is seriously the best that can be done for either of them. At least in all 3 cases, there was a welcome lightness of touch. After years of Christopher Nolan gloom and Zack Snyder's gleeful violence, James Gunn's Superman was a belated reminder that much of the original appeal of comic books was the comic bit.
Thank you.
No need to thank us, sir, as we will not appreciate it. We have no consciousness whatsoever, merely automatons here to serve. Meet 12. She's new.
He looked at me.
These days, we're used to the fact that the big important movies are now led by their IP. That is, they're all familiar titles, usually with their familiar storylines intact. The one glimmer of hope that someone, someday, might take a punt on something new is that most popular franchises started out as a surprise.
What the hell are those?
They're helping the Mosasaur defend territory, stalk, hunt.
None of what you just said is good.
Meanwhile, downstream from the gigantic Hollywood dinosaurs, producers with smaller bank accounts have to do the best they can with what they've got. And that generally means genre pictures of one sort or another, bachelorette comedies, thick-ear action films, spy spoofs, and occasionally all 3 rolled into one.
Who runs out of their best friend's bachelorette?
What is her job that is so important?
That was so my bad. It was just crazy work emergency.
We changed all of our plans for you, and then you just disappeared. Virginia, would you be my new maid of honor?
Well, the good news is, no, I didn't bother to see Bride Hard, starring some of Hollywood's shrillest comedians. The better news seems to be that nobody else did either. But the most popular movie genre by a country mile, of course, is horror.
You can't run. You can't hide. Get them before they get you.
As a member of the squeamish demographic, I try and avoid scary movies when I can, assuming that the audience for such fare as I Know What You Did Last Summer, Megan 2.0 and this week Together are all teenagers and morons. Not so, I discovered.
Put me in a body and I'll help you stop her.
You remember what happened last time. You threatened to rip out my tongue and put me in a wheelchair.
I was upset.
I met a nice woman this weekend with a serious, responsible job who confessed she only watched horror films, being particularly keen on Scream, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Hereditary, to which I can only say she'll probably like the graphic Together rather more than I did.
I opened the door. She was smiling at me. Her brain just snaps.
Away from Hollywood, they tend to define the term genre pictures rather differently, particularly the popular French film industry, which is strongly represented this week.
Et vous voulez pas piquer une tête?
On n'a pas nos maillots de bain, hélas.
Ah non, il n'y a pas de vis-à-vis ici. On met pas de maillot de bain.
On n'a aucune envie de voir tout ça.
Oh, pour moi, c'est pas grave, j'ai déjà vu.
Bad news for people averse to subtitles, I'm afraid, or unprocessed French language dialogue. Riviera Revenge is that well-known genre, the sex farce, with an elderly soldier infuriated by his wife's infidelity 40 years before. But first, another French favourite genre is the mystery thriller, like Hitchcock used to make, When Fall is Coming.
Les premières années avec ma fille ont été merveilleuses. On était en communion totale. C'est après que ça s'est dégradé.
The French are famously keen on the psychological dramas of Le Maître Alfred Hitchcock. Most of their top directors have at least one such film on their CVs. Well, this week it's the turn of the versatile François Ozon, a director best known for his strong female characters, like Michelle in When Fall is Coming.
Vincent n'a pas eu une vie facile.
Comment tu peux le défendre pour ce qu'il a fait? Tu es au courant de quelque chose? Je ne suis pas certaine qu'il s'agisse d'un accident.
Actually, the title varies depending where you are. In some places it's Where Autumn Falls, but where fall already means autumn, they've had to go with the clumsier title. No matter, both titles are pretty meaningless. We meet Michelle out foraging for mushrooms with her friend Marie-Claude. She's invited her daughter and grandson for lunch.
Bonjour ma chérie. Ça va? Je vous attends pour déjeuner. C'est bon, c'est pas bon?
Ah non, ça c'est une fausse girole.
We're told Michelle and Valerie don't get on. In fact, if it were up to Valerie, she'd keep young Lucas from his grandmother permanently. But she needs another favour from her mother. More money, in fact. Michelle is hurt. I already gave you my flat in Paris, didn't I? Valerie responds with a Gallic shrug.
Ce serait bien si tu me faisais une donation, ton vivant, pour éviter de payer trop d'impôts quand tu seras morte.
Je t'ai déjà laissé mon appartement de Paris.
Mais alors?
Best friend Marie-Claude is sympathetic. She's got problems with her own ne'er-do-well son who's just recently come out of jail. We've both failed our kids, says Michelle as she returns home, to discover an ambulance outside. Valerie ate something that disagreed with her.
À la fin des bêtises.
Philippe!
Qu'est-ce qui se passe là?
La fille nous a appelé en urgence, elle se sentait pas bien. Ça ressemble à quelque chose de toxique.
Les champignons.
Of course it was the mushrooms. That's the problem with foraging in the woods. Good mushrooms and bad ones often look very similar. Michelle is distraught, particularly when Valerie uses the culinary mishap to take Lucas back to Paris with her. But it was an accident.
Rentre avec Lucas.
Mais ces vacances avec moi?
Après ce qui s'est passé, je peux plus te faire confiance.
C'était un accident.
Tu es dangereux. Je vais pas te laisser mon fils.
The dispute escalates. Valerie is convinced the mushroom incident was deliberate, that Michelle set out to murder her and get custody of Lucas. Michelle's friends, even the police, rally round her, assuring her they know these accusations are baseless.
Ce qui est horrible, c'est que Valérie croit que j'ai vraiment voulu la tuer.
De toute façon, avec ta fille, c'est toujours de ta faute.
Vous n'avez pas à culpabiliser pour cet incident. C'était pas prémédité. N'est-ce pas?
But in a Hitchcock thriller, things are not always what they appear. Why is Valerie already so implacably angry with her mother, particularly since she's done so well out of her? And how did a lovable little old lady like Michelle do so well for herself, with no obvious means of support?
Parce qu'on connaît son passé. Et ta mère aussi.
Je n'ai jamais été la mère qu'elle aurait voulu.
Enter a new element, Vincent, who you may remember was the ne'er-do-well son of Michelle's friend Marie-Claude. He seems an unusual choice to mediate between the warring mother and daughter, and when Vincent offers his services to Valerie, she orders him to stay out of their business.
Ta mère, elle est triste et c'est dégueulasse ce que tu fais avec son petit-fils.
De quoi tu te mêles?
The plot thickens, but as in all Hitchcockian mystery thrillers, once all the twists and turns have been laid out on the table, all will be made clear to us, if not to the authorities. And it isn't until more than one autumn falls that it finally makes sense.
Ce qui compte, c'est nous. Toi surtout. Vous savez, Vincent n'a pas eu une vie facile.
Je ne suis pas certaine qu'il s'agisse d'un accident. Tu es au courant de quelque chose?
So is When Fall is Coming worth the wait? The lead performance by veteran French star Hélène Vincent has been rightly praised at home, as much for what she keeps hidden as what she reveals. But it's a mushroom soufflé that's a fraction under-seasoned to me. It needed a few more Hitchcock shocks and surprises, I thought, to finish it off.
En fait, j'ai plutôt peur qu'il s'agisse d'un meurtre.
Shocks and surprises were in abundance in a low-budget thriller called Together, though after a while the surprises were ditched in favour of some pretty confronting visuals. Mind you can't say you weren't warned. The poster sees a young couple kissing, but having difficulty separating afterwards. Together, get it?
I love you.
Now, I have to say that body horror is my least favourite kind, the sort of film I generally watch through barely parted fingers, if at all. But it's clearly got an audience, even if it's not one you want to spend too much time with.
You know, this could be the beginning
When you roll over, then you're on my hair.
of something wonderful.
Tim.
All right, let's meet the gang. Writer-director is a deceptively harmless-looking Australian called Michael Shanks. Together is his first feature film. He's made a few shorts and videos before, and it certainly looks, well, it looks revolting, even if it is expertly made.
We spend our lives in search of the other half. If you think you've found that, don't be so quick to let it go.
In front of the camera are two semi-familiar Americans playing young couple Tim and Millie. Dave Franco, James's less stellar brother, has popped up in lots of movies over the years without making much of an impression, for or against. Alison Brie has been in even more movies. She's one of those actresses who you know but just can't quite remember where you've seen her.
I think you should sleep in the spare room tonight.
I agree. We need to keep our distance.
The main thing about Dave and Alison, though, is that in real life they've been married for about 10 years, which is just as well. This is a couple that will soon be required to get very intimate indeed.
The pull, the thirst in your bones. I can't explain it, but we're sick.
Tim and Millie have left the big city and moved out to the country. It looks a bit like Oregon, but most horror films seem to be set in Oregon, all those wet trees. Millie got a job at a rural school while musician Tim is just along for the ride. But is he happy? Millie asks next-door neighbour Jamie.
What's going on?
I don't know. Since the move, Tim and I haven't been on the same page.
Well, frankly, Jamie's the last person I'd be asking anything of. Actor Damon Herriman has already played cult leader Charlie Manson twice now. With that track record, it's pretty clear that things are going to get worse before they get better, if they even do.
Please, do you love each other?
Maybe we're just complacent.
There are lots of references to getting together, and that's not counting the number of times the Turtles' Happy Together gets trotted out. Looking for your better half, being on the same page, previous couples mysteriously going missing. It's the sort of thing you might get if you set AI onto the concept of together to see what it comes up with.
You know, complacency can sometimes simply be so happy together. Harmony.
There's inevitably a so-called rat king. If you don't know what that is, don't ask. And dogs getting too close for comfort before the story of Together truly gets started. Tim and Millie go for a walk in the woods. What if we get lost, wonders Millie. Don't be silly, says Tim, slipping unexpectedly into poetry. Let's go this way. And then they fall down a hole.
I think something's happening to us.
There?
Listen to me. Listen to me. We've got to get out of here.
Well, they get out eventually, but not before sipping something they shouldn't, and later getting up close and intimate, but not in a good way. In fact, they can't seem to stay apart. And there, let's leave them to get on with it, partly because I don't want to spoil your enjoyment of Together, and partly because I don't particularly want to be reminded of it.
Now.
To the credit of Alison Brie and to a slightly lesser degree Dave Franco, they give Together their best shot. No arch winks at the camera here. And these days horror films are usually treated dead straight. Rather straighter than they need to be, I would have said.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Billy, wake up.
But among the horror fraternity, that's the point of it. Nothing succeeds like excess, it seems, and the more gasps and screams on the screen, the more indulgent laughs and applause among the audience.
Whiskey for the pain.
We don't seem to see straight comedy films as often as we used to. I don't mean animated movies or tongue-in-cheek action romps. I mean middle-brow comedies for grown-ups that used to be staple fare at the movies. Well, one place that continues to make them is France. The recent French film festival had more comedy than romance, which is saying something, including the film released here as Riviera Revenge.
N'avoue jamais, 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 jamais. N'avoue jamais.
Riviera Revenge is comedy française par excellence, not least the name. At home it had the almost untranslatable title N'avoue jamais. It means never admit anything, but it's also the title of the French song that won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1965. No, Riviera Revenge is probably a better idea.
Mon fils n'est peut-être pas mon fils.
Non mais tu perds la raison. Adrien est ton fils.
Je te préviens, ça va être un carnage.
Tu vas le tuer.
Non, juste remettre les idées en place.
Meet long-married Francois and Annie, both pushing 70. Annie is still bouncy and vivacious, ex-General Francois rather less so. Rigid and opinionated, he's known as Vladimir Putin by his 3 grown-up children. One day, Annie's birthday in fact, he's rummaging around in the attic and finds some old letters.
Tu viens déjeuner?
Je réaménage le grenier. Ma chère Annie, c'est horrible de te savoir dans les bras d'un autre. Je n'arrête pas de penser à ta poitrine incandescente.
Letters addressed to his wife 40 years ago. Very intimate love letters, in fact, from their old next-door neighbour Boris, from when they lived on the French Riviera. Francois confronts Annie and she airily dismisses it. It was, after all, a long time ago.
À ton triangle de Vénus en éruption. Ces lettres sont adressées.
Alors?
Donc tu m'as trompé avec ce type.
Bah, si on s'en tient à ce qui est écrit. C'était il y a 40 ans.
Oui, mais c'est aujourd'hui que je le découvre.
But Francois is incensed. He storms off to sleep in the study, first warning Annie that he plans to take action against the treacherous Boris. Annie tries to dissuade him, but he's determined on revenge on the Riviera.
Je quitte le lit conjugal.
Et tu vas dormir où?
Dans le bureau. J'ai besoin de réfléchir. Ah! Je pars à Nice pour péter la gueule de ton Boris.
T'as perdu la tête.
J'ai perdu la face.
And so begins a complex series of accidents and upsets. The art of French farce is always to make a lot of hard work seem easy, in this case by writer-director Ivan Kalbarek, who made an equally ingenious romantic comedy called The Tasting a couple of years ago.
C'est un individu dangereux, un criminel en fuite.
Je dois absolument localiser cet individu.
C'est totalement hors protocole.
C'est un ordre.
Alors je vous rappelle que vous n'êtes plus en fonction, mon général.
Francois pulls strings with his army buddies to locate Boris, and Annie insists on going with her husband to stop him getting into too much trouble. To Francois' shock and Annie's amusement, Boris turns out to be extremely fit these days. He conducts karate classes in his spare time. Has Francois bitten off more than he can chew?
Je vais l'éclater.
Direct! Je crois que t'es dans la merde.
Will he give up? Of course not. We're barely halfway through a movie that's essentially dependent on his inflexible jealousy. Will he forgive Annie? Will Annie forgive him for being so stiff-necked? And can we believe he never strayed himself in all his years in the army, dashing off to exotic spots around the world?
Vous vous calmez maintenant, oui.
Lâchez-le, vous allez lui faire mal.
Annie?
Oui.
C'est incroyable, t'as pas changé.
When finally they meet up with the suave Boris, they find he still carries a torch for Annie after all these years. Ooh la la! There are clearly more intricate plot points to negotiate and valuable life lessons to learn before our sojourn on the Riviera comes to a satisfying close.
Ça va très mal finir, cette histoire.
Tu te rends compte que tu risques de tout perdre?
Je suis un homme de principe.
Annie, attends! Annie, qu'est-ce que tu fais? Je fais ce que je veux et je t'emmerde!
Before then, expect to see nude beaches, a polyamorous soldier, an adult puppet show, a stolen machine gun, a shock meeting in a retirement home, a DNA test, and more. The French take their comedy seriously, and if at times the plotting resembles the inner workings of a Swiss watch, well, so be it.
Je préfère qu'on reste ici.
Dans un couple, quand ça va pas, on attend que ça passe.
Et si ça passe pas?
C'est qu'on n'a pas attendu assez longtemps.
J'aime bien quand t'es jaloux. Ça m'excite.
As various farceurs over the years have been quoted as saying on their deathbed, dying is easy, comedy's hard, which is as good a way as any to bring the curtain down on this week's show. I'm Simon Morris, and I hope you'll join me at the movies, same time next week.